The 1977 United States half dollar, commonly known as the 1977 Kennedy half dollar, is a significant piece in American numismatic history, not necessarily for its rarity or value, but for its symbolism, design legacy, and place in the broader arc of U.S. coinage. Issued as part of the ongoing Kennedy half dollar series, this coin honors the memory and legacy of President John F. Kennedy, who was assassinated in November 1963. Following his death, the U.S. Mint quickly moved to redesign the half-dollar denomination to bear Kennedy's portrait, resulting in the first Kennedy half-dollar being released in early 1964. The 1977 issue continued this tradition and was struck at both the Philadelphia, no mint mark, and Denver, D mint mark mints, with the San Francisco Mint producing only a limited number of proof coins for collectors. The obverse front of the 1977 Kennedy half-dollar features a left-facing portrait of President Kennedy, designed by Chief Engraver Gilroy Roberts. This image was based on a bust he had sculpted earlier and was intended to reflect Kennedy's youth vitality and hope for the future. The word liberty arcs across the top rim of the coin, while in God we trust is inscribed across the lower portion, split by Kennedy's neck and shoulders. Below the bust, centered near the bottom rim, is the date 1977, marking the year of issue. The reverse back of the coin was designed by Frank Gasparo, another prominent mint engraver, and it depicts the presidential seal, a heraldic eagle with a shield on its chest, holding an olive branch in its right talon and a bundle of arrows in its left, symbolizing America's commitment to peace and readiness for war. Above the eagle's head is a ring of 13 stars, representing the original colonies, and encircling the design is the inscription United States of America and half dollar. The 1977 Kennedy half dollar was struck in a copper-nickel-clad composition, having transitioned away from the 40% silver content that was briefly used from 1965 to 1970. By 1971, all circulating Kennedy halves were composed of a core of pure copper and outer layers of copper-nickel alloy, similar to dimes and quarters of the era. Each coin weighs approximately 11.34 grams, with a diameter of 30.6 millimeters and a reeded edge. While the coin retains the prestige of the Kennedy image and was once a highly circulated piece, by the late 1970s, public interest in using the half dollar had sharply declined. Most Americans preferred smaller denominations, and half dollars saw reduced use in daily commerce. As a result, although the Mint produced millions of 1977 Kennedy halves, approximately 43 million in Philadelphia and 31 million in Denver, many went straight into storage, and others were gradually absorbed into collector holdings or used in certain regional transactions, such as casino payments or vending machines. From a numismatic standpoint, the 1977 Kennedy half dollar is considered common, especially in circulated condition. However, collectors may still seek examples in high grades, especially those that are uncirculated, MS-65 or higher, or proof specimens from the San Francisco Mint. Proof coins were struck with special care using polished dies and blanks, resulting in mirror-like surfaces and sharp details, often stored in plastic cases or proof sets. Additionally, some 1977 half dollars are collected for their toning, strike quality, or as part of a complete Kennedy half-dollar collection spanning from 1964 to present. The initials FG, for Frank Gasparo, can be seen beneath the eagle's tail feathers on the reverse, signifying the designer's contribution and linking this coin to a long legacy of U.S. mint artistry. In historical context, the 1977 Kennedy half dollar reflects a time of American transition. The United States was emerging from the shadow of the Vietnam War and the Watergate scandal, with President Jimmy Carter taking office in January 1977. Economically, the country was grappling with inflation, energy crises, and changing social dynamics. The Kennedy image on a half dollar continued to symbolize optimism and a commitment to progress, even as the nation navigated a turbulent decade. Though its use in daily life had waned, the coins continued minting and preservation in American wallets, and coin collections speaks to its cultural and emotional resonance. Today, the 1977 half dollar may be found in old coin jars, inherited collections, or sold in bulk by dealers, often valued primarily for its historical significance rather than its numismatic rarity. Yet, For many collectors, each coin is a tangible link to mid-to-8th century American history and a reminder of President Kennedy's enduring legacy next top. The 1973 D. Kennedy half dollar, bearing the inscriptions United States of America, half dollar, Liberty, and the date 1973 with a D mint mark, is a remarkable piece of American coinage that carries with it deep historical, cultural, and numismatic significance. It forms part of the Kennedy half dollar series, which began in 1964 as a tribute to President John F. Kennedy following his tragic assassination in November 1963. This coin represents not just a monetary unit, but also a symbol of national mourning, remembrance, and admiration for the 35th President of the United States. Struck at the Denver Mint, denoted by the D mint mark located on the obverse front side of the coin beneath Kennedy's bust, the 1973 D issue is a regular circulation strike, although many ended up being hoarded by collectors due to the coin's continuing popularity. Composed of a copper-nickel-clad alloy, with a pure copper core sandwiched between outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel. The coin weighs 11.34 grams, measures 30.6 millimeters in diameter, and has a reeded edge. It was issued during a period when half dollars were still produced in significant numbers, but saw diminishing circulation in everyday commerce, partly due to the public's growing habit of saving them for sentimental or speculative reasons. By 1971, the U.S. Mint had ceased striking silver content half dollars for circulation, and the clad version had fully taken over, including in 1973. The obverse design was created by Gilroy Roberts, the chief engraver of the U.S. Mint at the time, and it features a detailed left-facing portrait of President John F. Kennedy. Above his head is the word Liberty, while the national motto "In God We Trust" is inscribed below his chin, split by his neckline. The year 1973 is placed at the bottom of the coin. The reverse of the coin, designed by Frank Gasparo, the Mint's 10th chief engraver, is dominated by the heraldic eagle, based on the Great Seal of the United States, with outstretched wings, a shield on its chest, an olive branch, and arrows in its talons, symbolizing the dual powers of peace and war. A ring of 50 stars encircles the eagle, representing the 50 states. The inscriptions United States of America and half dollar are prominently placed around the eagle. While the coin was minted in large numbers, over 83 million at the Denver Mint in 1973, it is important to note that 1973 half dollars were not released into general circulation and were available only in mint sets, which significantly impacted their availability to the public at the time. This detail has made 1973 D. Kennedy half dollars more sought after by collectors, especially in uncirculated condition, as many were preserved in their original packaging and remain in relatively pristine state. In the broader historical context, the 1973 D. Kennedy half dollar emerges at a pivotal moment in American history. The early 1970s were marked by the aftermath of the Vietnam War, the Watergate scandal that was beginning to unravel, and a general atmosphere of distrust in government institutions. Yet, the image of Kennedy, a symbol of idealism and forward-thinking leadership, remained a powerful and unifying figure in American memory, which contributed to the continued admiration and preservation of these coins. Economically, inflation was rising during the 1970s, and coins of higher denominations like the half dollar were becoming less practical for everyday use. This, combined with a cultural tendency to save the Kennedy halves, meant that even though the mint struck tens of millions of them, very few ever saw actual circulation. For numismatists today, the 1973 D. Kennedy half dollar offers an accessible and attractive piece of century American history. In circulated grades, the coin has modest value, typically only slightly above face value, but in uncirculated condition, especially in higher grades like MS 65 or above, it can command greater interest and higher premiums. Moreover, coins with strong luster, minimal bag marks, and sharp strike are particularly prized. There are also examples of these coins in proof-like or satin finish, although those typically pertain to special sets. While no major varieties or errors are associated with the 1973 D. Kennedy half dollar, minor die variations and minting anomalies, such as die cracks or doubling, may exist and are of interest to specialized collectors. It's also a popular choice for inclusion in typesets and for those building a full Kennedy half-dollar date and mint mark collection. As a whole, the 1973 D. Kennedy half-dollar reflects both the artistic legacy of a U.S. mint and the enduring emotional resonance of John F. Kennedy's presidency, standing as a piece of American coinage that continues to bridge memory and monetary history. Next top. The 1985 P. Kennedy half-dollar, minted in Philadelphia and bearing the bold P mint mark, is part of a long-running coin series in the United States that was introduced in 1964 as a tribute to the 35th president, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, who was tragically assassinated in November 1963. The Kennedy half-dollar quickly replaced the Franklin half-dollar series, both as a national memorial and as a symbolic representation of a turning point in American political and cultural life during the early 1960s. The 1985 issue, struck more than 2 decades after the series began, reflects both continuity and change in the U.S. Mint's practices and stands as a numismatic artifact of the Reagan-era America when patriotism, Cold War politics, economic conservatism, and a reassertion of traditional values defined the national landscape. On the obverse front of the coin, one finds the enduring left-facing portrait of John F. Kennedy, designed by Gilroy Roberts, the chief engraver of the United States Mint at the time of the coin's inception. Roberts based the profile on a bust he had sculpted from life in 1961, and the design was approved just days after Kennedy's assassination, reflecting the urgency and emotional gravity of the national mourning. The word liberty arches around the top of the coin, evoking the American ideal that Kennedy championed both domestically and abroad. Beneath Kennedy's neck, on the truncation of the bust, are the initials GR, subtly marking Roberts' contribution to the design. Just below the portrait lies the year of issue, 1985, a year significant in American history for several reasons. It was the start of President Ronald Reagan's second term, a period characterized by aggressive economic policy, diplomatic brinkmanship with the Soviet Union, and the popularization of modern American conservative ideology. Above the date, inscribed along the rim, is the national motto, "In God We Trust," a phrase that has appeared on U.S. coinage since the Civil War and serves to invoke the religious and philosophical underpinnings of the American Republic. The reverse back of the coin is equally emblematic. Designed by Frank Gasparo, who succeeded Roberts as chief engraver, it features a powerful rendering of the presidential seal, an American eagle with its wings outstretched, clutching an olive branch in its right talon, and a bundle of 13 arrows in its left, symbolizing the United States' commitment to peace and its readiness for war. The eagle's breast is covered by a shield with vertical stripes, representing the unity of the states under federal government. In its beak, the eagle holds a flowing banner inscribed with E pluribus unum, Latin for out of many one, signifying the union of diverse states and peoples. Radiating outward are 50 stars, encircling the eagle, representing the 50 states of the Union. The legend United States of America is boldly inscribed along the upper rim, while the denomination half-dollar anchors the bottom. The design communicates strength, unity, and national pride, a visual encapsulation of the American spirit that resonated deeply during the tense geopolitical atmosphere of the mid-1980s. The 1985 P. Kennedy half-dollar was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which had by then transitioned to using the P mint mark on many of its coins. Philadelphia minted Kennedy half-dollars in this era were produced primarily for numismatic purposes, and circulation was declining significantly. In fact, by the mid-1980s, the half-dollar had largely disappeared from everyday commerce in the United States, being used more frequently in casinos, vending machines, or by collectors rather than for general transactions. The U.S. Mint produced only about 18.4 million of these coins in Philadelphia in 1985, a modest number compared to the peak years of the series. The decline in circulation use meant that most of these coins remained in storage or were purchased directly from banks by collectors and roll hunters, often remaining in relatively uncirculated condition even decades later. The composition of the 1985 P. Kennedy half-dollar is copper-nickel clad, consisting of an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to an inner core of pure copper. This clad composition had replaced the original 90% silver alloy after 1970 due to rising silver prices and changing economic policies. The coin has a reeded edge, a standard security feature to prevent clipping, and it weighs 11.34 grams with a diameter of 30.6 millimeters. The transition from silver to clad metal fundamentally changed the numismatic and intrinsic value of the series, making post-1970 coins less valuable in terms of bullion content, but still desirable for their historic and symbolic significance. Numismatically, the 1985 P. Kennedy half dollar is considered a common date coin, but it still holds interest for collectors who seek to assemble full date and mint mark sets of the series. The Philadelphia issue is distinguishable by its mint mark P, located just below Kennedy's neck on the obverse, near the truncation of the bust. Coins in uncirculated condition can be found relatively easily, and although not rare, high-grade examples, especially those graded MS-66 or above, can command premiums due to their scarcity and pristine condition. It is also important to note that proof versions of the 1985 Kennedy half dollar were struck at the San Francisco Mint with the S mint mark and feature mirror-like fields and frosted devices, intended for inclusion in annual proof sets sold to collectors. The broader cultural context of 1985 further enriches the narrative of the coin. That year saw the continuation of the Cold War, with the Geneva summit between Reagan and Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev marking a turning point in East-West relations. Domestically, America was in the midst of a technological revolution, with the spread of personal computers and the rise of media culture. Music, movies, and pop icons like Michael Jackson, Madonna, and films like Back to the Future shaped the national psyche. The Kennedy half dollar, with its somber and dignified portrayal of a martyred president, stood in stark contrast to flashy, consumer-driven trends of the era. It acted as a steady symbol of national identity, history, and continuity, a reminder of the values, aspirations, and tragedy of the early 1960s amid the fast-paced change of the 1980s. In conclusion, the 1985 P. Kennedy half dollar is far more than just a 50-cent piece. It is a rich historical artifact embedded with layers of American symbolism, artistic craftsmanship, political history, and economic transition. It honors a president whose ideals continue to inspire generations, and it reflects an era when the United States was navigating both internal transformation and external geopolitical pressures. Whether found in a coin jar, a collector's album, or a dealer's display case, the 1985 Kennedy half dollar remains a compelling piece of modern American numismatic history, bridging the past and present through metal, design, and national memory next top. The 1994 P. Kennedy half dollar, minted by the Philadelphia Mint, is a modern representation of American coinage that both honors a pivotal figure in American history and reflects the numismatic and economic trends of the late 20th century. Bearing the bold inscription United States of America and half dollar on the reverse and Liberty and the date 1994 on the obverse, this coin stands as a tribute to President John F. Kennedy, who was assassinated in 1963. Designed by Gilroy Roberts obverse and Frank Gasparo reverse, the Kennedy half dollar series was introduced just months after Kennedy's death, replacing the Franklin half dollar. By 1994, the coin had been in circulation for over 3 decades, but its practical use in everyday transactions had diminished significantly. The 1994 P coin, like others in the series from the late 20th century, was primarily produced for collectors and institutional purposes rather than for regular commerce. It has a composition of 91.67% copper and 8.33% nickel, also known as copper-nickel clad, a standard that had been adopted in 1971 following the removal of silver content from circulating half dollars due to rising silver prices and public hoarding. The obverse of the 1994 Kennedy half dollar features the profile bust of John F. Kennedy, facing left, with the word Liberty encircling the top and the motto, "In God We Trust," positioned horizontally across the lower half of the coin. The year 1994 is struck just below Kennedy's neck, and the P mint mark, indicating it was struck in Philadelphia, appears above the date. The reverse of the coin proudly displays the presidential seal, featuring a heraldic eagle with outstretched wings, holding a bundle of arrows in its left talon and an olive branch in its right, symbolizing military readiness and a preference for peace. Above the eagle's head is a field of 13 stars, and a banner reading, "E pluribus unum," is held in its beak. This patriotic imagery is surrounded by a ring of 50 stars, representing the 50 states of the Union. The reverse design also includes the words United States of America along the top rim and half dollar at the bottom. In terms of mintage, the Philadelphia Mint struck 23,718,000 Kennedy half dollars in 1994, a moderate figure compared to earlier years. By the 1990s, the demand for half dollars in circulation had sharply decreased, largely due to changes in consumer habits, vending machine incompatibility, and the public's general disinterest in using the denomination. As a result, most of the 1994 Kennedy half dollars were not widely distributed through banks or stores, and many remained in mint vaults or were sold to collectors through coin rolls and mint sets. This coin is still relatively common in uncirculated condition due to these distribution patterns. The coin's face value remains 50 cents, though its collectible value can vary depending on condition. In circulated condition, it generally holds little premium over face value, but uncirculated or MS65 plus graded examples can sell for a modest amount, typically ranging from $1 to $5, with exceptional coins commanding more among collectors of high-grade modern U.S. coinage. From a numismatic perspective, the 1994 P half dollar belongs to a broader period in American coin history where commemorative and historical value began to outweigh daily use. The Kennedy half dollar, although initially a circulating coin, had by this time become a symbol of remembrance and a staple of U.S. mint collector offerings. The enduring popularity of President Kennedy, coupled with the artistic strength of the coin's design, helped maintain interest in the series despite its practical obsolescence. It also reflects an era where coinage was gradually shifting toward being more collector-focused, especially with the upcoming launch of the 50 State Quarters program just a few years later in 1999. Moreover, the 1994 P. Kennedy half dollar serves as a snapshot of American society in the 1990s, transitional, reflective, and still deeply connected to the ideals and figures of the mid-20th century. The coin, simple in composition but rich in symbolism, continues to occupy a meaningful place in American numismatics, especially for those who collect by date or series, or those who appreciate its historical context and presidential tribute.